Vasseur did not reveal a normal Ferrari update. He revealed the kind of problem that can destroy Hamilton's trust in a car. At Monza, Ferrari were evaluating a new rear wing concept, a part meant to unlock more performance, more grip, more confidence, more speed. But the prototype carried a warning that stunned everyone inside the story. Instability under combined braking. That sounds small until you understand what it means. It means Hamilton could be braking and turning at the same time, right at the moment where a driver needs total belief, and the car might not give him the answer he expects. And for Ferrari, that is terrifying, because this was not just about one wing. It connected to the same hidden weakness that had already haunted Hamilton in Monaco, a car with speed, but not always control. So the real question is not whether Ferrari can make Hamilton's car faster. The real question is much more dangerous. Can Ferrari make it fast without making it fragile? Subscribe to the channel. Ferrari's Monza story did not begin with a crash. It began with a promise that the car could be improved, a promise that more performance was still hidden inside it, a promise that Ferrari were not standing still while Hamilton and Leclerc fought with a machine that had already shown flashes of brilliance and flashes of doubt. That is what upgrades are supposed to do in Formula One. They are supposed to move the team forward. A revised floor, cooling changes, weight reduction, a new rear wing idea. On paper, all of it sounds like progress. It sounds like Ferrari looking at the SF26 and saying there is more inside this car, and we are going to find it. But here is the problem. Formula One progress is never just about adding speed. It is about adding speed the driver can trust. And that is where Hamilton's car became the center of the story. Because with Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari did not only gain a driver who can produce a lap time. They gained a driver who can feel when a car is lying to the stopwatch. A driver who knows the difference between a car that is genuinely improving and a car that is simply becoming faster in one area while becoming harder to control in another. That difference is everything. Imagine putting new tires on a bicycle. At first, it sounds like an upgrade. More grip, more confidence, more speed. But if the handlebars suddenly start shaking when you turn and brake at the same time, you do not care how much grip the tires promised. You care about whether the bike will obey you. That is the kind of issue Ferrari had to face. At Monza, the team were evaluating a new rear wing concept, a high-load idea that was part of their wider development direction. It was not just a decoration on the back of the car. It was supposed to shape the way the Ferrari created grip, especially when the car needed stability and confidence. And that is why the warning attached to it mattered so much. Instability under combined braking. Those 4 words changed the tone of the whole upgrade story. Because combined braking is one of the most delicate moments in a racing car. It happens when the driver is braking and beginning to turn at the same time. The car is slowing down. The weight is shifting forward. The tires are being asked to grip in more than one direction. The driver is trying to rotate the car without letting it become nervous. In simple terms, it is the moment where trust is either confirmed or broken. If the car stays calm, the driver can attack. If the car moves unexpectedly, the driver starts protecting himself. And the moment a driver protects himself, lap time disappears. This is why Vasseur's revelation was so serious. Because he was not describing a small inconvenience. He was pointing toward a weakness that attacks the beginning of the corner. And the beginning of the corner controls everything that follows. A driver who cannot brake with confidence enters the corner slightly slower. If he enters slower, the car rotates differently. If it rotates differently, he waits longer before getting back on the throttle. If he waits longer, the next straight is already compromised before it even begins. One moment becomes a chain reaction. That is why Ferrari could not treat this as a normal test note. A rear wing that brings load but unsettles the car under braking is not an easy win. It becomes a trade-off. And in Formula One, the most dangerous trade-offs are the ones that look good in data until the driver reaches the limit. This is where Hamilton's role becomes enormous. Hamilton has spent his career living at that limit. He knows when the rear of the car is moving in a way he can use, and when it is moving in a way that steals confidence. He knows when instability is manageable, and when it starts shaping every decision in the cockpit. And when Hamilton feels something like that, Ferrari have to listen. Because the stopwatch alone may not tell the full story. A lap time can hide effort. A sector can hide fear. A clean run can hide tiny corrections that only the driver and the data can fully explain. From the outside, a car might look quick. Inside the cockpit, it may feel like it is asking for too much risk. That is the gap Ferrari had to close. the gap between theoretical performance and usable performance. And that gap had already appeared before. Monaco had shown Ferrari the danger of a car with speed but limited certainty. On Friday, the car looked alive. Hamilton was fastest. Leclerc was close behind. Ferrari looked like a real threat for pole. The car seemed balanced, sharp, and suited to the slow corners. Then qualifying arrived and the feeling changed. Hamilton said the car had taken a step backward. The changes had been minimal. The team did not have a clean explanation. The Ferrari that looked comfortable on Friday had become difficult on Saturday. That was not just a bad session. It was a warning. Because if a car changes character without the team fully understanding why, the engineers are no longer in complete control. They are reacting. They are searching. They are trying to recover trust after the driver has already felt it disappear. When the car is not fast enough, everyone demands upgrades. When the rivals improve, everyone asks what Ferrari are bringing next. When Hamilton speaks about balance, the entire paddock listens. When Leclerc loses confidence, the pressure doubles. So Vasseur had to walk a narrow line. Push the engineers harder, but not blindly. Trust the data, but not ignore the driver. Bring updates, but not create a car that only looks strong in the wind tunnel. That is where the Monza revelation became bigger than one rear wing. It became a question about Ferrari's whole philosophy. Were they building a car for peak numbers or a car for usable performance? Those are not the same thing. Peak numbers can make a car look impressive in controlled conditions. Usable performance makes a car fast when the track changes, the tires move, the wind shifts, and the driver has one lap to deliver under maximum pressure. Ferrari had already learned that lesson the painful way. In Monaco, the car had looked perfect on Friday. Hamilton was fastest. Leclerc was almost right there with him. The garage believed the car had found the sweet spot. The rivals believed Ferrari were dangerous. Then Saturday arrived, and the feeling disappeared. Minimal setup changes. No clear explanation. Balance lost. Hamilton fighting the car. Leclerc pushing too far. That was the same fear wearing a different face. A Ferrari that could be brilliant, but not always repeatable. Monza made that fear more technical, more specific, and maybe even more alarming. Because if a new rear wing concept introduced instability while braking and turning, Ferrari were not just dealing with random conditions anymore. They were dealing with a development choice that could influence how the car behaved in one of the most important phases of a lap. That is why everyone was stunned. Not because prototypes sometimes have flaws. They do. Not because Ferrari tested something and found a weakness. That is normal. The shock was the nature of the weakness. It touched the driver's confidence. And confidence is not a soft idea in Formula One. Is not emotion for television. Is lap time. Is braking distance. It is throttle timing. It is whether the driver can enter a corner with full belief or whether his hands make one tiny correction that costs everything. Hamilton's feedback would have been crucial here because he could help Ferrari separate two things that often look similar from the outside. A car that is difficult because it is being pushed hard, and a car that is difficult because it is not giving the driver a clean platform. The first can be acceptable. The second is dangerous. A car should feel alive at the limit. It should move. It should communicate. It should tell the driver where the edge is. But it cannot surprise him. That is the line. A predictable slide can be used. An unpredictable snap has to be feared. And once fear enters the lap changes. The driver breaks a touch earlier, turns in with less aggression, waits a fraction longer before going back to power, leaves a small margin near the curb, avoids attacking the entry as hard as he wants. Each of those choices seems tiny, but Formula One is built from tiny losses. One tiny loss becomes a tenth. A tenth becomes a grid position. A grid position becomes dirty air. Dirty air becomes tire stress. Tire stress becomes strategy pain. And suddenly, a small instability under braking is no longer a small instability. It is the beginning of an entire race slipping away. This is what Vasseur had to make Ferrari understand. The car did not need to be spectacular in one condition. It needed to be trusted in every condition that mattered. That is the standard Hamilton brings. He is not simply asking for comfort. He is asking for a platform that lets him attack the way elite drivers attack. There is nothing gentle about that. A stable car does not mean an easy car. It means a car that tells the truth at the limit. And that may have been the real issue. Ferrari's car had speed. But did it always tell the truth clearly enough? That is the uncomfortable question behind the Monza story. Because if Hamilton cannot fully trust the car when braking and turning, then Ferrari have a ceiling. Not a power ceiling, not a downforce ceiling, a confidence ceiling. And confidence ceilings are hard to see from the outside. Fans see the lap time. Engineers see the traces. Drivers feel the missing freedom. That missing freedom is what separates a good car from a championship car. A good car can produce pace when everything lines up. A championship car lets the driver reach the limit again and again across different tracks, different temperatures, different tire windows, different pressures. Ferrari needed the second version, and Monza suggested they were still fighting for it. The revelation also carried another hidden consequence. It put pressure on the relationship between Hamilton and the engineering team. When a driver reports instability, the team has to respond in a way that builds trust. If the engineers treat the concern as minor, the driver starts to wonder whether they truly understand what he is feeling. If they overreact, they may abandon useful performance too quickly. The right response is difficult. They have to listen carefully, compare the data, test the theory, and decide whether the part is a genuine step forward or a trap wearing the mask of progress. That is why Vasseur's leadership mattered so much. He had to make sure Ferrari did not turn Hamilton's feedback into noise. He had to turn it into direction. Because Hamilton's words are not just opinions. They are clues. Clues about where the car is strong. Clues about where it is fragile. Clues about whether the upgrade path is creating the Ferrari he needs or simply creating a faster version of the same problem. And Leclerc is part of this too. Because whatever affects Hamilton's trust can affect Leclerc's attack. Leclerc is naturally aggressive, especially when he feels the front of the car is alive. Give him a stable platform, and he can be devastating. Give him a nervous car and the margin shrinks. That is exactly why Ferrari cannot build a car that only one driver can rescue. They need a car both drivers can trust. If Hamilton has to manage instability with experience, and Leclerc has to attack through uncertainty, Ferrari are not maximizing their lineup. They are asking two elite drivers to compensate for the machine. That might work for one lap. It does not work for a season. And this is the deeper reason the Monza revelation hit so hard. It suggested Ferrari were still in the dangerous middle ground. Not slow enough to tear everything up. Not stable enough to relax. Fast enough to create belief. Fragile enough to create doubt. That is the hardest place for a team to live. Because every good session becomes proof that the car can work. Every bad session becomes proof that the team does not fully know how to keep it working. The result is emotional whiplash. Hope on Friday. Questions on Saturday. Promises from a factory. Warnings from the cockpit. And Vasseur standing in the middle, trying to turn all of it into a direction Ferrari can follow. That is why the next decision mattered. Ferrari could treat the instability as a normal development issue, adjust the concept, and keep chasing performance. Or they could see it as part of a wider pattern, a sign that the car needed a deeper focus on predictability before any extra load could truly be trusted. One path is faster to announce, the other is harder to admit, because admitting a car needs predictability means admitting speed alone is not enough. And for Ferrari, that is a painful truth. The badge demands speed. The fans demand wins. The drivers demand a car worthy of their talent. The engineers demand proof that their work is moving the team forward. But Hamilton's car at Monza forced the simplest, harshest question of all. What is the point of finding more performance if the driver cannot use it with full belief? That is where the story turns. Because Vasseur's revelation was not just about what Ferrari had discovered. It was about what Ferrari would choose to do next. Would they chase the biggest number? Or would they chase the car Hamilton could finally trust? And that choice could decide whether Monza becomes a warning that saved Ferrari, or another clue they only understood too late.